right, folks, welcome. The inaugural episode of the Zach with an H podcast has finally arrived. There's today's guest. If you haven't seen his act, well, you better get to a sporting event next year because this is Steve Max. He is the Simon Sez guy. And in the span it would take me to finish this intro, he could probably get 1,000 people out of the game just like that. Welcome, Steve. A pleasure to have this conversation with you today.
Fly me to the moon. Let me play among the stars. Zach, welcome. Welcome to the podcast arena. Welcome. All the best success to you moving forward.
Appreciate that. And, in getting ready for our conversation, I believe we first spoke probably 4 or 5 months ago. It's early in the NBA season. Just wanted to get in touch. I think what you do is incredible. I think that especially something like Simon Sez feels so niche, and you found a way to kind of make that your thing. It's brings joy to everybody involved, and something as simple as just people having to listen to 2 words and make sure they hear those 2 words or not before partaking in the act can bring so much joy to 20,000 people at once. Bigger crowds. I think it's incredible, and I'm very excited to learn even more about it here today.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, not a day goes by when I don't, when I wake up in the morning, my eyes open up, and if I have a gig that night, whether it's a 10,000 seat arena, a 20,000 seat arena, or I just did a corporate event Monday in Dallas, 500 people. And just knowing that I'll have that opportunity to make those people smile and laugh, make their day a little better and brighter. It's it's a blessing, and I'm fortunate and lucky to do it, and I love doing it.
And this for you goes all the way back. And listening to your previous appearance with Christy Tagey and the Productive Passions, you got a magic book from your aunt when you were 15. Is that correct?
Yeah. When I was a kid, I was totally into magic, and it was like sort of a wonderful marketing thing. It was Lou Tannen's was a very famous, might still be open, magic store in New York City, and so they put out a book of tricks, and then in the back you could buy the tricks from them. So it was a double whammy. You get all excited about the magic tricks, and then you go, oh, look at this. You can actually purchase these things. And my grandma took me into the city, and we bought some tricks. And I was 15 years old. I started doing magic shows. And, I was, you go into people's basements, and there's 26-year-olds looking at you. And, you just try and entertain. And, that was the start of my showbiz career, doing birthday parties. I taught myself how to juggle and balance stuff on my face. It was crazy, man, just crazy.
And Steve, what was it about magic and entertaining as a young kid that kind of drew you to want to try it out and see if you're any good and give it a try?
Well, honestly, my family, we were all circus people. We loved going to the circus. Normally, when I went with my folks and my brothers and sister, it was Ringling Brothers at Madison Square Garden every year, and I just love the circus. There's just something about it, the smiles that they bring to the people. Always waiting at the end when the guy would get shot out of a cannon. I mean, that stuff is just top level stuff, man. And to be a part of that world, even by just doing magic tricks at birthday parties, it was a great entree into the world of showbiz, and that's what got me into it, really. I mean, no other reason except that we just love the circus.
And when you eventually got started, I know you spent a lot of time at a no longer existing hotel called the Pines Hotel, where a lot of the greats stepped before you. So how did you first discover that hotel? And then once you got there, what were you most determined to do to make sure that, hey, Steve Max, the entertainer, that could be a real thing someday? The real professional big deal that you are now.
Yeah. So the Catskills, which if your listeners don't know, is about 90 miles, 100 miles north of New York City. And back in the day, in the early 1900s, they started building these hotels and these bungalow colonies, and there was always entertainment up there. I started in 1978 at a hotel, small vegetarian hotel, and I was waiting tables and washing. I started out washing dishes, waiting tables. I worked there 5 years, and then I worked at another hotel, Grossinger's Hotel, which was one of the big granddaddy of the hotels. And there was a guy there, his name was Lou Goldstein, and he was sort of the granddaddy of Simon Sez. And we'd all, sort of like watch him from around the corner. He didn't like when staff watched. His show was strictly for the guests. And after 2 summers at Grossinger's, then I had an opportunity to work at the Pines Hotel as the director of activities and the master of ceremonies in the nightclub. So that was really cool. That was like the most showbiz I had ever been in, because now you have an entire room, a couple thousand people, hotel guests, and you're introducing acts, singers, comedians, and during the daytime, you're playing bingo, you're doing horseshoe and bocce competitions, and to fill time in the afternoon, I would do Simon Sez in the upper hotel lobby. And so the Pines Hotel in 85 and 86, for me, was my initial training ground to be a Simon Sez caller. And then it sort of took off from there.
Took off would certainly be an understatement. And a quick fast forward, because listening to your experience and doing some research coming in, it sounds like the inauguration of the WNBA in 1997, when they came into the league, turned out to really be the blessing in disguise. Because I know, long story short, for folks listening, I believe one of your clients, obviously you tell it better than I can, but one of the clients at a birthday party had a connection with New York sports, correct? And they said it's 2001 is the backdrop. Let's try it at a Liberty game.
That's right. The impetus for me was that I was at a Knicks game, and the halftime show was just a guy shooting foul shots for cash. 60 seconds on the clock, go. And this poor bastard wasn't hitting the rim. And you could sort of feel the crowd getting a little antsy. It's a New York Knicks crowd, right? New Yorkers are tough sports fans. And, to see this guy missing the rim, all of a sudden they're getting a little antsy, a little edgy. And it's the first time I thought, you know what? My Simon Sez would be more entertaining than what I'm watching. So I, as you had mentioned, I had done a birthday party up in Connecticut. I had no idea who the guy was, but it turns out that the dad of the kid was Dave Checketts, who at the time was the CEO of Madison Square Garden. And I didn't know it at the time, but then I was listening to the fan radio one day, and they said, now we're going to talk to the CEO of MSG, Dave Checketts. And I'm like, where have I heard that name? Holy crap, that was Dave Checketts. So I reached out to him, and he put me in touch with a person who put me in touch with a person who put me in touch with a person. And that person was Mike Champ. And Mike Champ was the director of event presentation for the Knicks at that time. And I reached out to him, and he said, Simon Sez, really? He said, let me talk it over with my boss, Gary Winkler. And he came back to me, and he said, we'll give you a shot, but not with the Knicks. We'll give you a shot with the New York Liberty, because their crowd is a kinder, gentler, family-oriented crowd. And so let's do that. And then if it works out, we'll bring you back for the Knicks. So long story short, they brought me in. It worked out amazingly. They gave me a videotape. I sent it out to every NBA team in the league. And the next season, I did the Sixers, the Knicks, the Houston Rockets, and the Toronto Raptors. And that was the beginning of it. And, here we are 21 years later. But the interesting thing was I didn't start doing colleges until I got a call in the 2002 season, and it was from Texas A&M, the Aggies. And they said, Steve Max, we saw you at a Houston Rockets game. Would love for you to come in and do our home conference opener. And that was I don't know, you call it a watershed moment? That's not the right word. What is it called? It was a
Kodak,
moment.
It's a Kodak moment. That's a coming to Max moment. It's a coming to Max
a Kodak moment, because it got me thinking, wait a minute. This gig that I'm doing for these college kids is the most amazing, energetic thing I've ever been at. And why am I not marketing myself to the 330 D1 schools in this country? And so that's what I did. I started marketing myself to the colleges, and slowly but surely, NBA, NCAA, and then the March Madness tournament started calling me. The Big Ten, the ACC, the SEC, the Atlantic 10, they all started calling me. And now my first 2 weeks in March started getting booked up. And this past season, I'm so happy to say, has been my busiest, most successful halftime season ever. I did just over 90 halftimes, which is more than I think any other halftime act in the country. And
take notes, Red Panda. Not quite 90. Take notes.
Don't mention Red Panda. She's the GOAT.
Red Panda.
But also, it was about 25 to 30 more halftimes than I usually do. So for some reason, something in the water, whatever it was, this was an amazing season. And, I couldn't be happier.
Now, do you have any NBA games left for this year? Is your current season done? Or is there a finals opportunity? Or is this under wraps? Are you not supposed to say anything, if there is?
Well, no, I don't know when this is going to air, but as you know, right now, the Boston Celtics are good for the finals, and the Mavs are playing the T-Wolves. The Mavs are up 3-1.
Yes.
The Mavs is the team that has brought me in the most over the past 21 years. They've brought me in over 30 times, and they've already brought me in twice this season.
Sounds like they want you get the tic-tac-toe. If they get one win, they're 3 games
that's
to win.
Right. That's right. So the Mavs may bring me in again. We'll see. The Timberwolves, if they somehow come back from their deficit and win, they use me during the season, they may bring me in. The Boston Celtics, I'm sad to say, has never brought me in. So maybe they'll surprise me and give me a call, but I'm not going to hold my breath. If they haven't used me in 21 years, I don't know.
All right, Boston calling. It's not just a festival. It could be what happens to your phone.
That's right.
In the finals. Anything
Look at
goes.
you working in the Boston Calling Festival thing. Nice.
Well, yeah, we were talking about it last week. You keep the receipts when it's ready. You know how this is. When you're getting out there and you're going to highlight and you're opting, how are you going to highlight one of these red hot Simon Sez players? You think of a detail. Let's think brain blast, and it just pops right out, and you're just delivering right there in front.
That's exactly right, Zach with an H. You know what I'm smelling.
I see. I know what you're smelling. We got the same. Both our nostrils are smelling what's cooking in the kitchen right now, and it's a fantastic aroma. It's a fantastic.
I do have an affinity for you because I'm a Jersey boy. I actually grew up in Fairlawn, New Jersey, which is right down Route 4 from you. So
a lot of good times in Fairlawn, some good bowling experiences, some good tennis experiences, and here's the fun fact that people do not care about, but they're going to hear it anyway. It's the only time I'll say it. My soccer career as a player, I am one of the worst soccer players you'll probably ever come across. It's not my game. I'm not that coordinated when it comes to playing soccer. And before we get back on track, the purpose I'm making here, I did play until the end of 5th grade, and there was a game in 4th grade. It was Wyckoff versus Fairlawn. So Fairlawn's the opponent. The key kid from basketball camp that I went to basketball camp with was the goalie for Fairlawn that day. Zach with an H has never scored a goal in soccer. He's never scored a goal in his career. On this day against Fairlawn, he scored not one, but two goals. 2 goals. He scored twice, and he has not stopped talking about it since.
Oh, my goodness.
20 years ago? 20 years ago.
Wow. Goal!
I wish I had an announcer. I wish I could have called my own game that day, truthfully. 8 years old, I knew I wanted to use the voice for something when I was 8. I already knew. I knew very, very young. I should have been commentating while I was playing, because the look I would have gotten in return from this guy who I hadn't seen in a year since the previous summer at camp would have been, would have been a pretty cool look. And I'm like, got you twice, buddy.
Right.
See you next summer.
Is there any video evidence of these 2 goals?
No.
Were your folks they're taping or anything? Or
my dad was the coach. I don't think he had the videotape. I don't think my mom had it either. I don't know if I actually couldn't tell you if my brother was in attendance or had a game of his own. He was a very good soccer player. I don't know if he had his footage, but I will say that if you had been there on this day in 2008 and you were doing the halftime show, that I might not have won your game that day, but I had a small moral victory that I did walk away with.
That's great. That's great. I mean, me and my wife are watching the Beckham documentary on Netflix, and they keep cutting from when he's like a kid with his corner kick, and then to when he's a professional with his corner kick. And I thought, wow, we could have done that with you, with your goals now, and then cutting to, or not.
No, outside of gym class, I never scored again. But that's why I have a mic and I'm not in a jersey. That's why we got the polo shirt. So I don't have the jersey. We don't have the uniform. Just a fan.
Okay.
Just a big old fan of Steve Max. Big old fan of sports. But the thing I think is very interesting, Steve, about the entertainment industry is that everybody makes their way differently. Everybody starts somewhere. Some people have the day job to support it. Some people graduate from school and they just go full-fledged, say, hey, I'm going to take a year or two. I'm going to figure out the finance a little later. I'm going to give everything I have a try. We're going to make this happen. There's some people you have a lucky phone call and you're 21 and you're just in the industry. And some people don't bust out until they're 30, 40, 50 years old. Everybody's different. So my question here.
Zach, I think I know where you're going with this. Go ahead.
Everybody, Steve, when they perform, right, the nerves may exist until you start. They may be with you the whole time. But for you yourself, how do you prepare for these types of gigs? And then once you start with your introduction, how does it feel compared to before you said your first words?
Yeah, well, it's interesting about nerves. Because I don't know if you're familiar, you're probably too young, but the great Johnny Carson, before David Letterman, before Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, Steve Colbert, before the late night, there was Johnny Carson. And he was on for 30 years. And even being on for 30 years, he always got nervous. And he said that just before they pulled the curtain open, he would be a little bit nervous. And he said, nerves is always a good thing, because if you're not nervous, then you're not fully invested. You become complacent. And if you're nervous, that means you really want to do a good job. You want to excel. You want to make sure you get it right. And so, I always have a little bit of nerve. Sometimes the nerves are a little bit more depending upon the situation. For example, I just did the NFL draft, which was this unbelievable event in Detroit this year. And the reason I had nerves, not that I was going to play Simon Sez, but there was something that was out of my control. What was out of my control? They said, Steve, we're probably going to interrupt you every time we need to do a pick. So I'd be doing my Simon Sez, hands up, Simon Sez, hands down, and Simon says we got to take a pick. We'll be right, and then they go and they do, the New York Giants, you're on the clock. And then and then we jump back into the game. So that was sort of an unknown for me. If I'm doing a halftime show, each halftime show is basically the same framework. What happens during the show, the things I improvise, that's always a little bit different. What my contestants may or may not do out there on the court, that's always a little different. That's one of the reasons, by the way, that I do so many, is because each show is a little bit different. So unlike another halftime act, for example, that maybe does the same thing, I'm doing something different every time just by the nature of the show. And but before I go on, I always get a little nervous. But once I hear the laughter, that first laugh goes away. And then I just get in my zone and go to town. And the laughter for me, by the way, is sort of a blessing and a curse. When I hear the laughter, I feel my client is getting their money's worth. That's what I think. And the fans are enjoying. And I'm getting them energized for the second half of the game. And I do feel that no matter what the halftime act is, if it's good and the crowd likes it and gets the crowd motivated and jazzed, then that can definitely affect the second half of the game. They're going to be louder. They're going to cheer their team on more. But if you get an act that's maybe not as exciting, then the crowd is not going to be as excited. So it's a wonderful opportunity for any halftime act to get out there and do an amazing job and get the crowd really jumping and whatnot, so that when the team runs back out onto the court for the second half of the game, bam, they're ready to go. And by the way, if a team wins and you do the halftime show, you have to take a little bit of the credit. And if the team loses, you got to take a little bit of credit too. I always feel, me personally, that when a team wins, I was part of the evening. I helped them to win. And if the team loses, I think, maybe I didn't do as good a job. I know it sounds a little bit silly, but I think halftime entertainers feel that way. We're a part of the evening, a part of the festivities, part of the interaction with the crowd. We affect the crowd, hopefully in a positive way. And you always want the home team to win, for sure. So
now, two follow-ups for you. I'll start with the first one. And going out on a limb with this one. This might get nothing. This might get an answer that people are surprised by. Is there a group chat between you and any of the other top, tell me what you consider to be the top of the NBA halftime acts? So are you in a chat with Red Panda? Are you in a chat with Christian and Scooby? Is there anybody that you guys talk to, whether it's bouncing things off or chatting? Is that a thing? Is that not a thing?
No, that is a thing. I'm on social media at Simon Sez Guy, and I'm on the TikTok, I'm on the Instagram, I'm on the Twitter, I'm on Facebook, and I do have conversations from time to time with some of the other halftime acts. I'm also very good friends with one specifically, the amazing Slatic, who has a great act, but he climbs up chairs and does a handstand. It's crazy balls. You mentioned Red Panda. Red Panda, I've never met. I've never had the pleasure. I don't mind saying that she is highly regarded as the GOAT of halftime act. She's been around a tiny bit longer than I have. I've been doing this 21 years. She's been doing it a little bit longer. But we are the two longest individual halftime acts in the marketplace, going back over 2 decades. Everyone else is way less than that. So I highly respect her and what she is able to do. And I remember when I was a kid on Wide World of Sports on Sunday mornings, they would have the Chinese acrobats of Taiwan. And these cats were doing things that were just seemed inhuman, just like doing flips and like diving through a hoop that had sharp knives facing inward, and they had like an inch space on either side, and they'd be flying through it. And I said, there is no way in the world that I would ever want to follow that act, because it's just too crazy, man. It's unbelievable what they're doing. How can a human possibly do what they're doing? Likewise, Red Panda, I would never want to follow her if there was some sort of a showcase. I'd rather follow
It's
someone else.
I think
She's the best, man, at what she does. But again, it's apples and oranges, right? She does her thing that's more of a circus act, and I'm the only halftime act that uses audience participation and laughter. So, we're all, we all do our own thing, and I think we're all pretty good at what we do.
I agree. As a fan that's now watched enough halftimes over the last several years, that it's now we're at a stage where it's not only reaching the people in the arena, but those watching on streams and on League Pass at home. You have the option to watch the in-arena feed. So until the broadcast comes back from halftime break in full, you actually get to watch the halftime show, which I think is obviously it's always best in person, but I think it allows bigger reach. And I also think that's a big part of the social media reach that some of the halftime shows have gotten now. Because you've seen there's some crazy acts out there that teams do with their own mascots that have just started to gain traction. I think it's cool. And then you kind of remember semi-pro, but this on a more serious level than semi-pro, that entertaining is in fact a big part of the game and really not just for those that are there.
Right. And by the way, I should say, I made a point during the March conference tournaments, the NCAA tournaments last year, to reach out to some of these acts, because normally we don't bump into each other unless it's a freak, happening at an airport and we happen to be walking through an airport going to different games. But there's no reason for us to be in Indianapolis at the same time if the Pacers is only going to be using one act, But at the ACC tournament, the Big Ten tournaments, they have multiple halftime acts during the day because they could have 4 games a day. And I made a point of going out and having dinner with a few of these acts. And believe me when I say that we all respect each other. I think there's room for all of us. We all do something different, whether it's, Christian and Scooby, a guy who's a great athletic specimen doing handstands with his little Chihuahua dog that, jumps up on top of him and does stuff, or Panda, or the Amazing Sladek, or Rolo Bola. I'm friends with all of them. And the other day I saw Christian and Scooby was on the Pat McPhee show, and he posted something, and I gave him a like it, and I, hey man, nice job, and I support him. If I post something, they'll support me. And that's kind of nice. It's not like, it doesn't have to be like this. It's nice to appreciate what someone does, the talent that they have, and say, hey, give them an attaboy. So here's an attaboy to all my halftime friends out there.
What advice, Steve? Because I think the beautiful part of what you do and what you've done, maybe the part of the story that not everyone knows, is you had the opportunity and the support to take a couple of years and really launch yourself into being the halftime guy when you had those couple acts, right? Your wife or partner, I don't think you were married. You were not, just for clarification before I continue, you were not married at the time. You were dating, but just moved in together, correct?
Yeah. Well, you've done your homework. I
tried.
I met my wife. I met my wife. I fell in love with my wife, and back in 1989, we've been together now, married 33 years, 35 together. But back in '89, I said, "Do you want to move in together?" And she said, "If you put a ring on my finger, we'll consider it." And I put a ring on the finger. We moved in together in 1990, and you are correct. She said she was incredibly supportive of my dreams. She had just graduated from Columbia University, got her MBA, and she had a job at Kraft Foods. And she said, listen, I want to support you, and I'll pay the bills for a couple of years. You go, try and do your thing. And that was, who does that, right? That's a quality partner. And that's how I was able to get my foothold here at our new home. And we're living in Westchester County, New York. And I did some shows, and then she said, good. She said, you made some money. Now you start helping with the bills, and I'll start saving my money. And that way we can, retire in style and when we have kids, we'll send them to wherever they want to go to college. You know what? Here we are, all these years later, and it was that forethought on her part that has helped me launch my career to get a foothold, helped me get where I am today. And by the way, even though now, after a few years, I started making my own money, and I didn't, rely on, I didn't have to rely on her paying the bills, but she still helps me from a marketing point of view. Anytime you get a request, an email, and it's not your usual gig, it's a little bit different, I run it past her. I say, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And she helps me a great deal in terms of, my business and where I want to take it, where I want to go, what's the next step I want to do in my career. So, all hail to the wise and beautiful and powerful Linda. I love you.
And it's with that, Steve. I think it's very important. Important question here. Not everybody is as fortunate to have that opportunity when they start. So let's say to those, they're trying to figure out their career. They're trying to figure out, do they want to get into entertainment? They feel like they have the knack. They're trying to decide, is it for me? How do I do it? What's your advice to those trying to break in, kind of like how you did, but maybe now in this modern day and age?
Yeah. And I have to say that to that point, a lot has to do with timing, because when I started doing this years ago, America's Got Talent wasn't a thing, and social media wasn't a thing. So many people are getting discovered now because they post stuff on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And that wasn't around when I started out. So there was only a certain amount of halftime acts, and it was a really good time to break in. Now, if you want to be a halftime act, there's such an onslaught, because you still have, a lot of the older acts, but then you have all these new acts that some agents are just grabbing off of and trying to sell them. And it's like a whole cacophony of acts out there. But I would say definitely use social media to your advantage. And here's another thing, when I first started marketing myself, I was sending out VHS tapes in the mail to potential clients. Do you know how difficult that is I mean, just the NBA, you're putting a VHS tape in an envelope, taking it to the post office and mailing them out, and you don't know if they get them or not, and then they got to watch a VHS. So use what's at your fingertips right now. If you have an act, make sure you get it out there on social media, and then you can just send links to people and, take chances. Nothing is out. Believe me, when I was doing magic shows in people's basement, the last thing I was thinking is that I'm going to be playing Madison Square Garden. That was the last thing. But took a little leap of faith, took a chance, made a phone call. And that's kind of what you got to do. You never know when the big person is going to pick up the phone. A lot of times it's just a message, but every once in a while, someone will pick up the phone. And if you sell yourself just right, you might be at Madison Square Garden too. So anyone who's out there, you got to follow your dream. You got to make sure that the quality of your act is good. So take smaller gigs, work on it. That's what the training ground of the Catskills was for me, was, working on my act and getting better and better and feeling more comfortable in front of people. And work on it. And when you feel it's ready to go, give it a shot, man. I wish you the best of luck.
And I think the toughest thing maybe for anybody is finding that confidence to just send. Because the worst thing that's going to happen, right? You're going to send out 1,000 emails, make 1,000 phone calls, send out 1,000 tapes, whatever. The worst thing that's going to happen, right, is they might say no. And if one person says no, there's another person right there and there. And I think the beauty of the entertainment industry and of people putting themselves out there as if one single person, right? One team says, hey, we want Steve Max for halftime. You did that halftime. You brought your best. You got to 4 teams and eventually spread across the league. The web grew and everything became interconnected, right? You get that one yes. And if you're confident enough, you stay the course, you get that yes, anything is possible.
That's right. And I will tell you that I use social media really not so much to market myself, but as a means for the winners of my Simon Sez to be up on my account, because they kind of get a kick. If they win a halftime show, I always have 2 winners when I do a basketball halftime. And, I post a picture and they love that. They like it. They send it to their friends and everything, seeing that they're on this team. And I don't have a lot of followers. I have maybe, a little over 2,000 Instagram followers. TikTok, maybe I'm inching up on 5K. So I don't have, like hundreds of thousands of followers. And the last thing I wanted to do was take time out of my day to create content. Because when you're doing 80, 90, 100 halftimes a year, you're traveling. When you're not working, you're traveling. And the people who are really big, they spend dozens of hours just working on content, creating content. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to have a certain quality of life. So now, having said that, a year and a half ago, a kid who saw me at summer camp and liked me, he liked my act, and all of a sudden he's working at TikTok, and he finds a video of me on YouTube and he posts it, and the next thing you know, it has 21 million views. So, so I can't poo-poo TikTok and social media, because you never know. To your point, you never know when something's just gonna click and happen for you. So that was pretty cool. A lot of people saw that, 21 million people. And then all of a sudden, I'm walking into like Notre Dame, and there's one of the women basketball players, and she sees me walking onto the court from my sound. She says, "Simon Sez guy." I'm like, hey, thank you very much.
That's what it's about, right? The act is for everybody else, but it feels great knowing the joy you can bring and the power that your energy can have on the audience.
True that, baby. True that.
RT, reshare story. So as we wind down, Steve, been a pleasure hearing more about your journey firsthand. I think what will be interesting here, I'm going to ask you a couple questions about your favorite things. We'll see who relates to Steve Max with their everyday favorite. Because we know Steve Max.
Is this like a speed round?
Say again?
Is this a speed round?
Of sorts, right? We know Steve Max, the entertainer. But who is Steve Max, the father? Steve Max, the husband? Steve Max, the guy that wakes up every morning just like the rest of us, right? Who is this guy?
That's right.
So we got 6 things. This is just a random assortment. If you don't have an answer, you just say pass. And then we'll do that. You plug where we can find you, and then we say goodbye.
Awesome. Listen, I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else. So let's go. Let's give it a shot.
Amen. All right.
Is this going to be a thing for all your future guests? You're going to do the same thing with them?
We're going to find out. Okay. The vibe of our conversation definitely merits this segment being included. So
okay, I'm ready.
All right. Favorite movie?
The Sting.
Favorite?
You don't even know that movie.
I don't know The Sting. I'm going to watch it. I'm writing it down.
Robert Redford and no, you don't. Oh man! All right,
watch The Sting.
It.
The Sting.
The Sting. Yeah.
The Sting. I'm going to watch it. It sounds like they go undercover.
No. It's really good. It's about con men. All I'll say. It's about con men.
I'm going to watch it. I'm going to report back to you. I will write a book report. I haven't done a book report in 8 years. I'm going to write a book report on this movie for you. And that's
okay.
Favorite TV show?
Favorite TV show? That's a tough one. I'll just say, I'll say, well, I don't know, David Letterman. I mean, I watched him for
Okay.
so many years. I watched him. He's a big influence on my life. So, and I was on Stupid Human Tricks many years ago. But
Stupid
David
human
Letterman
tricks.
also said Stupid Human Tricks. Yeah, that
All
was one
right.
of the segments on the show.
I see you did a whole. It's on your YouTube. All right, I got it. I'm gonna watch that too. I'm giving myself more to do.
Okay.
Next time we do this, I'm gonna know you as well as you know you. No, not that way. There's all things change, things evolve. All right, we got a couple more categories here. Favorite sports team, or maybe you can't reveal this one. Any your number one favorite team to root for in anything.
Okay. I'm going to say, I'll just say I'm not going to name a basketball team
Yes,
because my favorite team is the team that's bringing me in and
Yep.
paying me the shekels. But
Of course,
I will say
baby.
shekels, if you know what I mean.
Oh, I do. I know what you mean.
But Zachary with an H. Here's why I'm going to say this team: New York Giants. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the morning that my mom passed away. This is going back 2008. The Giants were playing the Patriots.
Yes.
And the New England Patriots, I think it was February 3rd, 2008. Patriots had an unbeaten season. Nobody beat them. And here were the Giants that sort of backdoored their way into the playoffs. They were a wild card, and they made their way to the final game, and then they ended up ruining the Patriots' season. They turned they gave him that one loss. They beat him in the Super Bowl with the guy catching the ball on his helmet, and so for me, from an emotional point of view, my mother's spirit flew to the game and helped the Giants beat the Patriots, the darn New England Patriots, who, by the way, haven't they won enough? And beat the Patriots. So from an emotional point of view, I will say the New York Giants.
Much respect. And my fun fact for that, Eli, who threw the pass, Terry, you made the catch, share a birthday. So another cool connection on that day for you.
There you go.
The gift that keeps on giving. All right. Favorite book.
Well, wait a minute. When is your birthday, by the way?
September 13th.
September 13th.
Yes.
When my birthday, you've done a lot of background.
I don't have your birthday.
It's a holiday.
Oh, so it could be any day because the birthday is a holiday by itself.
Well, St. Patty's Day, March 17th.
Oh, that is a happy belated. That is a good birthday. So that means you wear green every year on your birthday. You dress
means
up.
That when I go to the gym, I'm wearing my little leprechaun hat and green socks. I like that. That's right.
I'm not going to forget. Now I know March 17th. I'm not going to miss another. Right. March 17th, 2025, 12:01 a.m. Who's the first message going to be? Well, I mean,
it's going to come from Zach with an H.
That's right. All right, we got 3 more, and then we're rocking out. Favorite book you've ever read? Ever.
Favorite book I ever read?
Yes.
Oh, geez, that's a good one. Well, I'm reading a book right now that my wife gave me. It's called Die. It's called Die with Zero, and it came out in 2019 by a guy who had a lot of money. He made his money in the energy marketplace, and the whole point of it is, people, all they do is they want to make money, 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 money. And he tells the story about the ant and the praying mantis or something. I don't know what it's. But the ant spends the whole summer gathering food, so he can last out the winter. And the praying mantis doesn't. He just sort of chills. And then the winter rolls around and the praying mantis dies. But the ant, he's okay. He's got all this food. But the problem is, when did the ant, live it up? Because he's gathering all his food. And then he likens that to just people who work all the time and they don't have time to enjoy life. What's the point of it if you have all this money, but you don't take time to enjoy your life. So my wife recently retired, and we're going to start spending a little more time doing some fun things and living life.
It's nice to hear that. Congratulations to her and on being able to do that, and for the Simon Sez continuing, you guys. Lot more happiness for both of you, and then eventually
Thank
you got
you.
all the time, all the adventures, all the love in the world. Hope that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Two more questions.
Two more questions and we're done. Well, three. Two favorites. Favorite food to cook? Steve Max, the chef. Chef Steve Max. What's his favorite thing to make?
Favorite food to cook? I'm going to say, you know what? I love the barbecue. I love the barbecue. And this is going to sound so pedestrian and lame, but I just love cooking a burger.
Okay.
Is that bad?
My favorite thing to cook is a good steak, a little stir fry in there. So I'm right there. Not on the grill, in the pan cook.
Okay.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, burger, man. And then you grill up some onions and peppers, and you put it on there with a tomato, and a nice bun and a potato bun. It has to be a potato.
Yes.
Potato bread bun. And then it's just.
You just gave the world your recipe. You just gave away your secret recipe. It's gone.
That's not a secret. Not a secret.
Not anymore. All right. And your favorite food when you and your wife go out to eat, what's your favorite food to order?
Interesting. She just turned me on. Well, she didn't just turn me on to sushi, but she's been a lover of sushi for years. And I was at a gig. Actually, it was for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And they did yeah. There it is. They brought me in. They always bring me in for their mascot night because then I do mascots versus fans, and it is just a free-for-all. It is amazing. But they also brought me in this year for their season ticket holders party, which they held at a really big theater in the downtown district. And by the way, a little something I learned about Cleveland is it has the second largest, after New York, the second largest theater district in the country. So how about that for Cleveland? Nice job, Cleveland.
Love Playhouse.
So they had a spread in the back for the entertainers that night, and they only had sushi. And I never ate sushi. I just thought it was some kind of gross, But I started eating it, and it was spicy, and it was delicious. It just turned me on to that. But having said that, my wife and I, when we met, and Seinfeld was on Thursday nights, and Chinese food was always our appointment TV food. So every Thursday night, we would get Chinese food. We sit hunkered down in front of the TV, and we watch. So I would have to say that Chinese food is our jam. I'll just put it out there. It's certainly my jam. When I travel, I'm always looking for Chinese food.
I'm with it. And okay, what's the best Chinese? What state? Doesn't have to be the place of all the travel you've done. What state has the best place you found?
Okay. Now I actually have an answer for this because you think I wouldn't have an answer for Chinese food, but
you would. It's all similar.
In Salt Lake City, there's a place, and I can't tell you the name of it, but sometimes you order like a wonton soup or an egg drop soup, and it tastes like dishwater. It's like dishwater, and they threw in a few wontons. But there's this place in Salt Lake City. The soup is so effervescent and so delicious, and then the wontons are just like a bonus. And so that's my favorite place when I'm on the road to go for Chinese food.
All right, I'm gonna make sure that Guy Fieri and the Food Network get in touch with you because I feel like they could be enlightened by new things. I think that's the perfect segue. As I ask you one final question, Steve, a pleasure chatting with you this evening. Where specifically, what do we have to type in on the interwebs to find out who is this Steve Max guy that I've been talking to for the last 50 minutes?
Oh, man, I feel like I just ate all those spicy wings on that tea, and then they always say, look into this camera, look into this camera, look into this camera, tell you where you're going to be. So, where am I going to be? Okay, I actually have some cool things coming up. I'm doing, and I don't do a lot of this, but I have a minor league professional baseball game in Marion, Illinois. The Thrillbillies of Thrillville in Marion, Illinois, next week. And then I go right from there to Iowa to do the Iowa the Something Woo, the Something Woo. It's arena football. So
Okay.
I got that. And then I'm doing the largest music festival in the world over in Milwaukee. It's called Summerfest. And I'll be on the Uline stage entertaining thousands of people. It's really for the Uline summer interns, but I'll be there in a few weeks too. And some things throughout the summer, but summertime, because I work so much during basketball season, summertime I have, gigs here and there, but I'm going to, enjoy this summer to its fullest and spend time with my honey. So that's what I'm looking forward to doing.
I'm excited.
And also my wife.
He ends it with a zinger. I'm not going to try and follow that up. I don't have the... Someone's raise your hand. Someone says drop your hand. I can't do this, the Steve Max speed, but I will say thank you, Steve. A pleasure chatting and looking forward to continuing to follow your career and hoping we meet at an arena next season.
Well, I will leave it with this. Zachary with an H, Simon Sez. Thanks for having me, buddy. Appreciate you.
I won't say Simon Says you're welcome. That's your thing, but I will say you're welcome. It's been a pleasure. And we will see you next week, folks, on episode 2 of Zach with an H. Hope you enjoyed the program.